right here live from the NFL Combine as usual. We want to get smarter here, Casey Vallier. That's why we bring in Brad Spielberger. Knows a little bit about everything about this game, but I love that you do so much for Pro Football Focus as far as the salary cap goes. I want to start there with you right now. How does that twist and turn GM's eyes as far as 1 week they don't know what the cap's going to be. The next week they wake up and they got $30 million extra to play with.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Obviously, it applies to every team. So, relatively speaking, they're all in the same boat. But I talked to a couple teams this past week. I thought it was going to be about $249, $250. So you wake up with $5-6 million more dollars to be able to spend. I think for every team, it's one or two decisions that maybe was leading a different direction. Can you retain a rotational piece of your own? Or are you going to be in a market for a guy you didn't think you would be in? It sounds small, but one or two moves can change the entire offseason. It's been great. It's been huge for those teams.
Hey, this is a big time. Obviously, NFL Combine, a lot of storylines at the top. The most important is the quarterbacks, possibly 5 going in the first round. We don't know. Second most biggest story that you're interested in, if you understand my question, which is odd, I think, but not that quarterback question. But what are you looking forward to as far as, after the quarterback questions are answered?
Yeah, I think the cool thing will be who is the first defensive player
taken.
Ooh,
I like that.
We're hearing a lot about the offense. You got the receivers, the tackles, the quarterbacks, which, of course, is going to be the marquee names. But is Byron Murphy out of Texas going to be the first defensive player taken? I think it's interesting. Who's the first corner? Is it Terrion Arnold out of Alabama? Is it Quinyon Mitchell, who I know a lot of people have, linked to the Colts a bunch already? So I think that's the interesting thing to me is may not be a single top 10 pick on defense. Maybe Byron Murphy gets in that mix.
Real quick, is sticking with the draft there, one of the things I've thought of when you talk about it that way, so offensive heavy, I mean, doesn't that make it more of a premium to go and get these guys that are the clear-cut top of the defense? They may not be, as far as playmakers go, overtaking some of your receivers and quarterbacks, but I would think that would make it even more enticing to go get one of these defenders because the depth elsewhere might change that.
It's a good point, right? You're getting receivers late, you're getting some other positions late. I really don't think you're getting a lot of defensive line late, particularly on the interior. Johnny Newton's that next guy out of Illinois, a disruptive problem on the interior as well, a little bit undersized, but I think it's a very good point. There is a drop-off, I think, across the entire defensive line, even a corner a little bit too. I mentioned those couple guys. There's some names you hear late, but I think it's a good shout. Some teams might say, do this one now because we can get a receiver in the third, fourth that we really like.
Brad Spielberger right there for Pro Football Focus. Center in on this Indianapolis Colts draft, upcoming draft. Obviously, so many storylines with the veterans, free agents that are still out there, and the second coming, we like to call it, of Anthony Richardson, finally having a chance to play with number 28 behind him and Jonathan Taylor. What's your outlook for this draft for Chris Ballard as well as the 24 season with this Colts team?
Yeah, I think last year with the volume they had in the draft and coming to some of the good moves they made, like adding a Samson Ebicam, I think you've got yourself some optionality here where, look, you obviously want immediate impact players, but you bring in Josh Downs, he's making an impact immediately. Some of these young tight ends, the offensive line taking strides, Will Fries and Bernard Raymond. I think the beauty is we hear best player available, all that stuff every year.
Right.
I think they really can kind of sit back and say, we can think long term. We can think about, are we trying to replace DeForest Buckner in a couple of years? Are we trying to, figure out different things, whether it's short term or long term? I think they can do whatever they want.
Now, we talk about, you talked about the defensive tackles in this group, how you can get better of them early, but not as far as depth goes later in the draft. And one of the big guys that's a free agent for the Colts is a guy like Grover Stewart, who, you look at his impact, and it has been pretty impressive what he has done as a member of the Colts. When you look at what they do in free agency, how important do you think it's going to be with what they do with Grover Stewart? And then you look at the draft at 15, and if that's the connection, is that an area where the Colts could go?
Yeah, the thing there, too, is I think Grover's going to do pretty well. We've seen the interior defensive line market the last couple off seasons in free agency do really, really well. Even the early down run stuff for profile types, your Dalvin Tomlinsons, your DJ Readers, 0-1 tech guys that, they just make a huge difference in how you can line up in the formation. You can have an extra guy maybe back in coverage because they can two-gap. I think he's going to do quite well, whether it's from Indy or elsewhere. I don't know about 15, but I look at the second, third round. Chris Jenkins at Michigan, maybe Tavondre Sweat, who's enormous out of Texas. They don't keep him, or those guys are coming up their board.
All right, Brad, some crazy action happens at a lot of drafts and stuff. And are there teams in your eyes out there that are going to make moves? How many to say, we're going to be a player? We got 5 guys that could go, maybe even more, depending on what people do with Rattler and Nix and everything else. Is there a team that's in a mid-level team or down as far as draft picks selection goes that is going to say, I'm making a move, I'm going up to get our guy? Who do you think?
Yeah, I do. I think it starts with Atlanta at 8. And then I think you have 11, 12, 13, three teams in a row in Minnesota, Denver, Las Vegas. I think particularly the Vikings in Las Vegas, I'm starting to get the sense that Kirk Cousins might not be back in Minnesota. And so if that is the case and you're there at 11, you probably think we got to go get a guy. Like, we're not going to wait for the fourth, fifth name. I think the Cardinals at 4, the Chargers at 5. I know the Giants have talked a lot about taking a premier player, maybe even getting in the quarterback situation. I can see that move back too. So, 8 through 13, moving into 4 through 6 range, I think is where you're going to see some movement.
Now, one last thing here with the Colts free agent-wise that I want to talk about is we heard Chris Ballard talk about they're wanting to get something done with Michael Pittman. We know we have the little window we have of the franchise tag. What ultimately do you see his market being if he doesn't get tagged and he enters into that free agency market with the elevated salary cap?
Yeah, so this is fascinating because you see more and more year to year. If a draft class is strong and deep, which we know at receiver this year, it's insane, both top heavy and through the draft, that can impact the free agent market. We had it last year too. A lot of guys did not do very well. Now, obviously, Pittman is a very, very good player, a proven, established commodity in the NFL. I think in the open market, you're above $20 million a year at that point. Like maybe Indy can fight and scrap and claw to get it like right around that number. If you have multiple teams bidding for his services, it's going to get up there.
From Pro Football Focus, that's Brad Spielberger right there. You're a savant when it comes to this league. You're a savant when it comes to roster, so I'm going to put you on the list. We call this one House of Representatives member or practice squad member. This is for every NFL team. So here's a name that I'm going to pull and see if you can tell me if it's a House of Representatives member or practice squad. John Sutherland.
John Sutherland, House of Representatives.
Oh, Jonathan Sutherland, 5'11", 202 out of Penn State, the strong safety.
5'11", you the height weight for the Senators too?
I know, I'm just saying. All right, we got it.
You got me.
All right.
Penn State too, big
hey,
school.
you know what? Do me a favor. Follow him on Twitter X right here. If you want to get smarter about the game of professional football, it's easy. @PFF_Brad. Brad Spielberger, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Man.